Hello everybody and welcome back to another exciting episode of Boyographic, the show in which I, Matt, the Gameboy, will talk you through the highs and lows of the Gameboy library, one cart at a time. This week we'll be looking at a Japanese and Chinese exclusive. It's Ninja Spirit. So based on what we've covered so far on Boyographic, iRem's output for the Nintendo Game Boy was pretty solid, with games like Hammering Harry, Nobu and R-Type being at the high end of the lists for most Game Boy collectors' top titles on the system. What's surprising, however, is that during this period in the early 90s, when iRem seemed to be on top of their game for the Game Boy, the company wasn't doing so great financially. Despite the successes of their early arcade titles, sales gradually declined so much that by 1994, the company completely ceased the production of video games altogether. In such a climate, it's unsurprising that we never saw a localised release of Ninja Spirit, a Game Boy port of iRem's arcade classic from 1988, developed by the fine folks at b.i.t.s Studios. Having already brought R-Type 1 and 2 to the Game Boy, b.i.t.s had no doubt proven themselves to iRem as capable of recreating faithful arcade ports to the handheld market. They were then tasked with doing the same for this title. So in December 1993, Ninja Spirit saw a release in Japan and China, only months before iRem washed their hands completely of gaming. Well, for a little while anyways. For those of you who've not had the pleasure of playing either the original arcade or TurboGrafx 16 version of this game, it's worth noting that at its core, Ninja Spirit is an incredibly hard game. Playing as Giko, or Moonlight as he's referred to in the TurboGrafx manual, you're out to avenge your father's death by defeating the unnamed evil that slayed him, that looks to me suspiciously like the love child of Mumra and Skeletor. You do this by battling through the game's 7 stages, all themed to look like feudal Japan, and kicking some ninja ass as you go. Moonlight starts with 4 weapons from the off to accomplish this: a sword, a shuriken, bombs, and a chain sickle, all that naturally have their own strengths and weaknesses. The sword, while having an unconventional arc when swung, can be used to deflect projectiles, for example. The shuriken naturally can be thrown, but is weakest of the weapons. The bomb is powerful but slow, and while the sickle can deliver a great blow at range, often leaves you defenseless from behind while you draw it back in. These weapons can naturally be powered up to a more substantial form, but perhaps the coolest thing about Ninja Spirit is your ability to have 2 extra shadows of yourself that attack in tandem with your hero. Now, I know what you're thinking, viewer. This game looks a lot like Legend of Kage with Ninja Gaiden 2's clone mechanic pasted on top of it. While it's hard to deny Taito's influence on iRem's efforts, Ninja Gaiden 2 is actually the one that presumably copied Ninja Spirit, given that it was released 2 years later. Another influence could potentially be the ceiling runner mechanic from iRem's own Metal Storm, but that one's a little harder to pin down. As cool as the shadow mechanic in Ninja Spirit is, however, it raises 2 huge problems for the game. Naturally, this is a Game Boy title, so by duplicating your hero twice and having these duplications throw 3 shurikens apiece, tears the screen like crazy. It also means that because of the system's limitations, there are less enemies on screen at a time, and as such, if you're clever about it, you can make the game incredibly easy by applying this 9 shuriken method. I beat the game in about 15 minutes by doing this, which filled me with an immense sense of satisfaction in cheesing a game that I've never been able to beat on any other system. That is to say, it's incredibly easy on Game Boy mode. Like the TurboGrafx 16 port before it, the fine folks at b.i.t.s realised that the arcade game's one-hit kill level resets were not suited for the home console port because, well, they were savage. Arcade mode is included in this version of the game, but with so many projectiles flying around, I'd gladly shake the hand of anyone who beats this way legitimately, as is probably impossible. There is a surprisingly high difficulty spike halfway through the game, even on Game Boy mode however, as the 4th level becomes incredibly troublesome if the player is lacking in power-ups, as most of the enemies can deliver one-hit kills. This game's speed is something that should be right up the alley of anyone who loves some run-and-gun gameplay in the vein of Contra or Metal Slug, as the constant onslaught of enemies on the player makes the game less methodical and more reactionary than any game I think I've covered on Boyographic thus far. However, as with most games of this caliber on the Game Boy, this can lead to crazy screen tears beyond the simple abuse of shurikens I previously mentioned. The boss battles in this game though are incredibly easy, as despite them being pretty accurate to the arcade original, the smaller screen size of the Game Boy means your catch-AS jump is a little bit easier to control here, meaning enemy patterns are a lot easier to dodge. However, this isn't the only thing stacked in the player's advantage in the boss battles, as even when you do catch a stray projectile or a one-hit kill, you realise that not only does the game implement health for the player, but lives. Meaning you could theoretically take up to 15 hits on a boss if you're good enough at clearing the level before it. This makes the fight against the end boss even easier than ever, as he doesn't take too many hits to go down. If only it made the fight against level 4's flying block boss less tedious, eh? While defeating the game will see you see a very nice and English outro to the game that sets up a sequel, unfortunately one never happened. Which is a shame, because this game is actually pretty damn good. To break it down more critically, the graphics are fine, the gameplay is fun, and the music here is passable. Short of some screen tearing and the strangely easier gameplay on display here, Ninja Spirit could have made a great addition to the Western Game Boy library. Unfortunately though, because of its reputation as a solid title and its general scarcity in its homeland of Japan, Ninja Spirit is a game you're going to have to pay out the nose for if you want to get a physical cartridge. Because of its length and difficulty, however, I suggest maybe skipping this one or emulating it, unless you're truly in love with the idea of this game. As for that amount of money, you can pick up a substantial amount of better games. And that brings us to the end of another episode of Boyographic, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you've enjoyed. If you have, then please subscribe and tell others you think may be interested in the channel to do so, as that's how it gets around. If you are a new viewer, why not check out our Boyographic videos, where I look at the highs and lows of the Game Boy library one cart at a time, playing through some crap so you don't have to. I also have a series called Boy Curious, where I look at bootlegs and oddities for the system, as well as All the Glory, where I play through a game like this, cutting out all the deaths, leaving you with none of the faff, but all of the glory. Until next week, folks, you can find me on Twitter at Gameboy, as well as on Facebook and Instagram at the same place. But until then, let me know what you're playing and what I should cover next in the comments down below, and game on.